In this video, we're going to go over some of the basics of diagramming sentences to see how all the parts interact together. For this video, I'll just go over some of the more core elements and then we'll progress to more complex sentences as we go. For this first page, we're just going to go over the simple subject and the simple predicate. We're not going to look at any of the other words in the sentence. So to identify and diagram these parts of the sentence, you must first find the simple subject and simple predicate. And your diagram is going to always begin like this sort of T shape with the subject on the left and the predicate on the right. If we look at this first sentence, the students are visiting Rome on Saturday. It's usually easiest to find the verb first, what's happening in the sentence. In this sentence, are visiting is our verb phrase. The simple predicate can include helping verbs like are in front of it, but it won't include any words after it, like Rome or on Saturday. Then we find what is doing that action, which would be the subject, in this case, students. So to diagram our subject and predicate, we would have students on the left. Then we would divide them with a line that goes all the way through and put the simple predicate, are visiting, on the right. For now, we're going to stop there, and later we're going to add in these other elements from the sentence. But that is how you would diagram just the subject and predicate. And all sentences must have a subject and a predicate, so that's always where you begin. Let's look at one more sentence. Mr. Holland has been teaching them about the Colosseum. Again, we find out what's happening. Teaching is our action verb here, and we have two helping verbs that go with it, has and been. So our subject is the thing or person that is doing that action. In this case, it would be Mr. Holland. Mr. Holland has been teaching. So we have our subject on the left and our simple predicate on the right. In this next sentence, which says, in the morning, they will take a train to Venice. Again, we find that verb, take, and in this case it has the helping verb will. And we determine who will take a train to Venice. In this case, our subject is they. So again, we have that horizontal line with a vertical line that divides them. We place the subject they on the left and the simple predicate will take on the right. But again, we do not include the word like train. Train is not a verb. It is a noun. It's a thing. So we would not include that in our simple predicate. And our last one, everyone is very excited for the trip. In this case, we have one very short verb called a linking verb, which is. Excited is not a verb. It's not something you can do. It describes a state of being. It describes how someone feels. So our verb here is just the word is. And our subject for is would be everyone. So we have everyone on the left and is on the right. Notice here I capitalized everyone because it was the first word in the sentence. Your capitalization should always match whatever the capitalization looked like in the sentence. Now, that is our first element. We always start with the subject and the predicate when diagramming, but there are a lot more elements in the sentence than that. So now we're going to add in the direct object. In 6th grade, this is added in lesson 25, and in 7th grade, this is also added in lesson 25, where we have the subject, the predicate, and now a direct object. A direct object goes with an action verb, and it will answer the question who or what about that verb. It will usually be the thing that is receiving that action. It is diagrammed like this. We have, again, our subject on the left, then a vertical line, then our simple predicate. That never changes. Now we add on to that a direct object. It has a different shape line. Notice that this line stops at the horizontal. That is how you identify a direct object versus a predicate. Now we are going to return to a sentence that we looked at earlier. It said the students are visiting Rome on Saturday. Our subject is still students. And our verb is still are visiting. So nothing changes about that first part of the diagram. Students is our subject. Are visiting is our verb. Now we ask the question what? Students are visiting what? Or it might be who. In this case, it is what? Students are visiting what? And that would be Rome. That is the place they are visiting. So Rome would be our direct object. And again, we're going to stop there for now. We're not going to worry about those other words in the sentence for now. In this sentence that we had earlier about Mr. Holland has been teaching. We talked about how Mr. Holland is our subject and has been teaching is our verb, so that stays the same. And again, to find the direct object, you see who's receiving that action. The thing receiving the action of teaching are them. He has been teaching them. That is who he was teaching. And then this sentence will also look familiar. In the morning, they will take a train to Venice. We have they as our subject, will take as our verb. And again, we look for a noun that answers that who or what question. They will take what? They will take a train. In this case, train is our direct object. This last sentence does not actually have a direct object. I just want you to see how you identify when something has a direct object versus when it does not. So again, everyone is our subject. Is our verb. You may see a word excited that looks like it's answering the question what? Everyone is what? Everyone is excited. But it's only the direct object if you have an action verb and something that receives that action. Is not an action verb, and excited is not a noun that receives that action. So in this case, this sentence does not have a direct object. Is a linking verb, which you will get to later, and linking verbs cannot have direct objects. Now, on this next page, we are going to add adjectives to our diagram. Adjectives are always drawn on a diagonal line underneath a noun or pronoun. An adjective describes a noun or pronoun, and we always put descriptive words underneath the word they are describing. So now we are going to get to the point at which we can diagram every word in the sentence. So from here, we're going to diagram all these words. In 6th grade, adjectives are taught in lesson 28 for diagramming, as well as in level 7. For this first sentence, which says, the Romans built a huge empire, again, we find the subject and the verb first. Every sentence has to have a subject and a verb. It could have any number or 0 adjectives, but it must have a subject and a verb, so we always find that first. Our verb here, the Romans built a huge empire. Built is our action verb. That is what's happening. Then we see who did that action, in this case, Romans. That is our subject. Built is an action verb, so we'd want to check for a direct object. In this case, Romans built what? They built an empire. Empire would be our direct object. Notice we only answer in these single words unless there's a helping verb associated with it. So a and huge do not go on that line with empire. Instead, they are adjectives. The is an adjective that describes Romans. So we put the on a slanted line under Romans, capitalizing it because it's the first word in the sentence. A describes the empire, so we put it on a diagonal under empire. And huge is an adjective describing the empire, so it goes on an angled line under empire. Okay, and now we have diagrammed all the words in this sentence. Let's look at another one. Ancient Greece included many independent city-states. Again, we look for our verb first. In this case, it is included. And we ask who the subject is. What included many independent city-states? We would get ancient Greece. Ancient, however, is just an adjective describing Greece. Greece is the place, so Greece is our subject. Greece included. Included is an action verb, so we check for a direct object. Greece included what? It included city-states. That is our noun at the end of the sentence. Because it has a hyphen in it, this is all treated as one word. City-states would be our direct object. Then we go back and look for those adjectives. Ancient is an adjective that describes Greece, so it goes underneath Greece. There were many city-states tells you how many of them, so it is also an adjective. And independent describes the city-states, so it is another adjective. So both your subjects and your direct objects can have adjectives underneath them because they are both nouns. And let's look at one more. The ancient Greek people built extensive temples. Again, we have that same action verb built. And then we look for who built. In this case, it would be people. Notice it doesn't say the ancient Greeks built it. It says ancient Greek people. So people is our subject. And then the people built temples. That answers what they built. So that is our direct object. And then the remainder of our words are adjectives. The describes the people. Ancient describes the people. And Greek describes the people. So each of those are separate adjectives describing the people. And then extensive describes temples, showing you how large they are. They are extensive. And that is how you add adjectives to your diagrams. Now we're going to add one more element, and that's prepositional phrases. Prepositional phrases are a kind of modifying phrase. They can act as adjectives or adverbs. For now, we haven't talked about adverbs yet, so we're going to talk about prepositional phrases that act as adjectives. So they describe nouns and pronouns just like an adjective, only it's a whole phrase rather than a single word. They are diagrammed under the noun like an adjective would be. You put your preposition, which would be the start of your phrase, on the angled line, and then the object of the preposition on the horizontal line. The object of the preposition is a noun or pronoun, so it can also have any number of adjectives underneath it. Let's look at this first sentence. Rome may be considered one of the greatest imperial powers in history. Let's look for our verb. In this case, it's a verb phrase. Our simple predicate would be may be considered. Considered is our verb. That's something someone can do. They can consider something. And may and be are helping verbs. And then we ask what may be considered. That would be Rome. Now we look to see if we have an action verb. Rome may be considered one of the greatest imperial powers in history. In this case, your direct object is simply the word one. Sometimes it can be helpful to look for those prepositional phrases first and separate them either in your mind or physically on paper from the rest of the sentence. Of the greatest imperial powers is a prepositional phrase, and in history is a prepositional phrase. The core elements of your sentence, like your subject, your verb, and your direct object, cannot appear in a prepositional phrase, so we're not going to look in there to find the direct object. It just leaves us with the word one to be our direct object. Everything else are modifying that word. So one is being modified by this phrase, of the greatest imperial powers. Of would be our preposition, and then it ends at our object of the preposition, powers, and everything in between are adjectives. So first we diagram our preposition coming off of the word one, and then powers on the horizontal line. Underneath powers, we're going to add our adjectives. They were the powers, they were greatest, and they were imperial. Each of those describes the word powers. And then in history is also telling us about one in history. So we add another prepositional phrase here, in, and then history. Now, prepositional phrases can modify other objects of the preposition, and sometimes it takes some analyzing to figure out what it is describing, and sometimes it's not guaranteed to be one thing or the other. For example, in history, You could probably argue that it could also have described the powers in history. In this case, I think it is more clearly describing that it was one thing in history that was one of these powers. Now let's look at this next sentence. The Greeks influenced many aspects of Roman culture. We look for that verb again, influence. That's what they were doing. And we ask who influenced? The Greeks did the influencing, so Greeks is the subject. Again, we don't include the. And then we ask what did they influence? They influenced aspects. It doesn't say the Greeks influenced Roman culture. It says they influenced aspects of Roman culture. So aspects is our direct object. And then the remainder are adjectives and prepositional phrases acting as adjectives. We have the Greeks, and there were many aspects, and of Roman culture is a prepositional phrase describing the aspects. They were aspects of Roman culture. We put of on the diagonal, the object of the preposition on the horizontal, and then any adjectives, in this case Roman, underneath the object of the preposition. Okay? And that gives you an idea of the basics of diagramming sentences, from subjects and predicates to direct objects, and then adding in adjectives and prepositional phrases.